Hello everybody, welcome to our first episode of the D&D Makers Prize. Today I'm going to be interviewing a really good friend of mine and one of the biggest trolls that I know, Rajat. He is an avid D&D player, a Warhammer player, and a miniature painter. Rajat, do you want to add to that? Do you have anything else to say?
Thanks, Indrani, for having me on. No, not really. You covered all the major points. I am a D&D player. I was a D&D player. I'm a DM. Trying to be a Warhammer player during the pandemic is not exactly an easy task. But yeah, miniature painting is one of my primary hobbies as well.
Right. You say that it's difficult, but I know that you play with your sons, or at least your eldest son. How is that playing Warhammer with your
Yeah, so I try. It's not something. I mean, he's still too young to grasp the intricate rules and all of that. But just getting kids into like board gaming, into a little bit of fantasy. Like they anyways read stories about like magic and dragons and things like that. So this is just building upon that, building upon the kids' imagination.
I
It's
remember,
just I guess, yeah. Go
I
on.
remember a long time ago we talked about this and you mentioned something about there being a fine line between like introducing them to fantasy and also keeping them in the realms of reality. How does that go? Like, do you still write
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. So that is one of the things that you it depends obviously depends on the age of the children. If you have a kid that's like 6 years, 5 years or younger or something like that, there has to be a line where you need to explain to them, or they need to understand what's real and what's not real. Like, dragons are not real, like unicorns are not real. So these are mythical creatures. Your kid should not believe that he actually can fly. uh, it's just one of the things. But at the same time, you don't limit their imagination either. You want that to just you want them to believe that anything is possible. So I guess that's one of the main reasons why even as adults we play Dungeons and Dragons, right? It lets you imagine that you can do the impossible. You can beat the odds, and you can beat these mythical creatures, or you can sneak your way all the way through the entire castle and just get that that dragon hoard, or that stash of gold, or that legendary weapon without being spotted. So it's a little bit about it's a little bit about just letting your imagination like roll. Just go, just let the kid have fun, let the adult have fun. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
That's true. Like you talked about how like imagination is such a big part of like playing these games, and I think miniatures like really add to that experience. Like just imagining is one thing, but seeing it in front of you and being able to like physically interact with these things, like I think takes it to another level. I always love it when like the DM whips out like a good map or like some miniatures or something, even if it's like a bottle cap token on the table, like that still gets me excited. So I want to talk about how you got into miniature painting. Like what sort of was like, oh, that's something I want to do. Like how did you get into it?
So what you said actually is exactly why and how I got into miniature painting. My interest in this hobby actually peaked. It started off with D&D, and like you said, like we mentioned right now, imagination is one thing. You imagine you're fighting these creatures. The DM is describing the scene, and you're playing it out in your mind. But at the same time, when the battle map flips out, or when if you've been playing a long-term campaign and you have a little figure that is your character, it gives you an anchor in that world. It gives you I mean, it's like a little bit of a little bit of ownership in that space where like, okay, that's my character. This is what my character looks like. And as a I mean, my journey into D&D started off with me trying to find players, and obviously it was a challenge because I didn't really know. I was never active in the board game communities or any such thing. So when I started off, I started off by being a DM, and then I found people along the way and made friends, and we've been playing ever since. But coming back to the point that I started off as a DM, and then I wanted to be a DM, and then as a DM I'm like, I need to have, this is Dungeons and Dragons, you need to have some monsters. I can describe things, I can describe all kinds of scenes, all kinds of settings, but sometimes just for like those boss battles, or maybe for those memorable villain fights, you putting that dragon on the table. That's just like that's a cool moment. I mean, for me personally, it's a very cool moment. Like you said, it's absolutely fine. You can play the game with like bottle caps as well. But when I started my journey into D&D, I was like, it'd be pretty cool if I could have a dragon mini, if I could have a couple of just some of the starter, the usual enemies, so to speak, in my repertoire, like your skeletons, maybe a few bugbears, things, some of things of those kinds. And that's how it started off. I picked up a couple of board games, like I picked up the Dungeons and Dragons board games. Didn't really play the games that much. Got them pretty much for the minis, and I decided, this is pretty cool. I want to put this on the table. And then once I got into D&D with minis, that's when I stumbled upon the entire, this entire side hobby where people are like, gray plastic on the table, that's nice, but it would be better if there'd be some paint on it. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I have some free time, so let me try my hand at this. And that's just how it started. I started off with a couple of skeletons, and then the next thing I know, I'm like, I started D&D maybe in like 2016. Started painting in 2017, and just have not looked back ever since. It's just gone from being something that I do for D&D to actually me probably painting more than I play D&D at the moment, or run D&D at the moment.
That's crazy. So you got the board game.
Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andani.
I'm terrible at this. But so you got the board games. Yeah. You took out the minis. Did you paint those? Like, was that your first foray into painting, or did they come pre-painted? Like, when did you be like, what was the first miniature you painted? No.
Those were unpainted.
Right. What?
A skeleton. No, actually, no. Not a skeleton. A zombie. A zombie.
Right.
A zombie is the very first miniature I painted.
Right. You still have it around. I think I've seen a photo. Let me throw it up. Didn't you do like a comparison? Like the first one you did and then you repainted the same?
Yeah, I did.
What
that
was that
unfortunately,
like?
I don't have it lying around ready at the moment. That was a bit of a surreal moment. That very first painted mini, I was pretty proud of it at that time. I was like, oh shit, man, seen all these videos. Like I stumbled upon the mini painting subreddit, and then there's this entire community on YouTube and all Twitter, and the tutorials about like, oh, you got to thin your paints, have like a sharp tipped paint brush, and these things about highlights and shadows. And I don't have an art background, I'm a finance major, so I'm as far away from like the artistic side of things as possibly could be. But I just picked it up, and I was like, oh man, okay, let me try the dry brush, and taking a brush and just slapping paint on it, and it's like a little like a black zombie. You can probably see the picture on my Instagram handle at some point. Yeah, sure. And that was my very first mini that I painted, and I was very proud of it. I was like, wow, this is amazing, this is so much fun. And then I was like, there are 5 zombies, let me finish all 5. So I did the 5 zombies, went on to skeletons after that, went on to skeleton archers, and I've kind of lost count, I've lost track after that.
That's pretty insane. Like you went from like those five to see where you are now with the kind of amazing art that you put out. It's been like a even as like an outsider who doesn't know much about the process, it's really great to see. But I wanted to talk about the techniques because you talked about how you sort of went into a deep dive of like looking at different ways of painting. From the perspective of a beginner, did you find that overwhelming? Like how did you navigate like picking up a new hobby is
Absolutely.
always crazy. So like how did you
Absolutely.
navigate that?
A new hobby is crazy, I agree, but then again, this is painting. Painting, it's an art, it's not a science. People on the forums will tell you like, oh no, you know what? You start with black, then you add like 2 drops of water and like one drop of like red to it, and then keep adding little more water, little more red, and like, they try to make these scientific formulas. And first, obviously, without any art, without any background in art, I was like, yeah, man, let me get like these dropper bottles and like put exactly 2 drops, exactly 1 drop, and if it looks like crap, I was like, oh man, I messed the formula up somehow. But then you just kind of, obviously with experience and as I understood things better, I realized that an easy hobby to get into, and at the same time it's a difficult hobby to get into as well, depending on how far you want to push yourself in terms of how perfect or how happy you are with your models, the way they look. And there must be like there's no limit on how you can paint a model. There must be like 10-15 different techniques, and you can use each technique in combination with the other. You have like thinning your paints or just slapping like thick paints on, glazing, dry brushing, airbrushing, all of that. So it was very, very daunting to begin with. But after you give everything a bit of a shot, after I give everything a bit of a shot, I kind of stumbled into my sort of comfort zone, the kind of style that I like, and the style that suited me the most. And I guess I just grew from there. But the initial days were incredibly hard, incredibly overwhelming. Like you rightly said, there's so much information, and you ask one question on the internet, and you'll get like 10 different answers, which take you in 10 different directions. So then you have to kind of essentially Reddit, and you've got to just like wade through that swamp and figure out where the hard ground is.
That's crazy. So, walk me through like your process of learning, right? Like again, you said that there was a lot to like sort of sort through and a lot of questions you had answered and like different approaches. So how did you like? Was there like eventually a way where you like, okay, this is how I'm gonna get through this, or was it like just throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks? Like, what was your process?
Yeah, is actually I did not have. I kind of gave up on that scientific formula nonsense pretty early. That 2 drops of red paint, 1 drop of this paint, mix it together, and then like dance on the terrace for 30 seconds, and then it like looked perfect. No, I kind of figured that was the wrong approach, and then I just had to try everything. There was just so much information to make sense of it all. Just experience. Just you got to it's just something that I've been doing this. I can't say that I've learned everything for sure. I definitely haven't, and I have a long way to go in terms of what people are really doing out there. But it's just you got to keep trying new things. You got to see what you like. Your likes and dislikes change as you get better, as you get worse. As your style of painting miniatures also. Because whether you want a very cartoony style, or whether you want a very realist style of miniatures, whether you want bright colors, whether you want desaturated colors, all of that stuff. It's just you got to give it a try. It's it can seem very daunting to a beginner, and now in hindsight, if I was to do it all over again, I wouldn't do what I did. Obviously, I had nobody to hold my hand, but if I had to guide someone right now, I would give some pointers, and I would hope that people learn from my mistakes.
What are those pointers?
It's taken me just ask. I'm here. We have an active mini painting, you know, a semi-active mini painting Telegram channel. I mean, a group. And if anybody who's listening to this, to this video, to this, this video is interested, please come and join us. We'll try and put up a link in the description of this video as well. Come join us, ask questions. I mean, if you have people giving, it's just that's that's the best thing. Like what's taken me like 5 years now, 5 years to get to this point. Like with a little bit of guidance, you can probably get to the same point in like maybe a year and a half. I don't know.
Yes, that's really insane. Yeah, I'm a part of that group, even though I haven't actually painted a single miniature yet. I've tried two of them, but I haven't painted anything. You were saying that there's so many different processes. Do you have?
What's I just getting back to what you said right now? It's absolutely fine even if you're not interested in mini painting, but just come join us on that group. It's just fun and it's awesome to look at people painting miniatures for their board games or for their D&D games and just other random stuff. We're all kids at the end of the day. We're all kids trying to paint our toys. So just join us irrespective of whether you plan to paint or not paint. Just come and have a hangout with us and have a good time. Yeah. I'm sorry, go on now.
I have to attest to that. The folks on the group are great. I love a community that's so open to sharing knowledge. Like everybody there is happy to help out and we're always giving out tips and it's so encouraging. It's a great space. If you're a maker of any kind in the D&D space, I highly recommend joining us on the group. And going back to my question, you mentioned that there were like multiple ways of achieving the same thing, right? Like dry brushing and like airbrushing and this and that. And like I've heard you use terms like zenithal, something. So
little priming. Yeah. All of
so that. What is your process? Have you figured out a way that works for you?
So I still vary between different methods depending on my mood and depending on whether I want to finish the paint. I want to finish painting the model quickly, or whether I want to paint it to a very high standard, like if it's for a commission or something like that. But my comfort zone, so to speak, would be starting painting with the darkest color. So I'll just give you an example. Maybe I want to paint a red cloak. I would paint the entire red cloak. Like first I'd prime it black, and after painting it black, I'd give it like a dark shadow color. I'll decide what the color of the shadow would be in the cloak, in the recesses or in the areas where light would not fall. Let's say it's a dark red. I'd paint the entire cloak dark red, and then the areas where I think light would actually fall on the miniature, I would gradually increase the brightness of the red. I'll go from a dark red to like a mid-toned red, and I'd put that in. I'd put that on the areas where light would fall, and then I'd put like my highlight colors, like my bright red, my saturated red, or whether pink, whether it's a yellowish red, whatever my highlight. I'd put that on the points where light would fall on the cloak. That's my preferred style of going from darkest shadows to the highest highlights. That's what I tend to fall upon when I don't know how to really proceed. Otherwise, if I do know how to approach something, I might try a faster method.
Makes sense.
In terms, so just one of the basic things that people try to forget, or people don't know miniature painting at you need to the thing is that these models are not life size. If I want to paint a red cloak, I cannot just give it one coat of red and be like, that's it. If you want to make it look realistic, so to speak, or if you want it to really look good from like a 2-foot distance, when you put it down on your table, you have to really increase the contrast of the model. You have to make the darkest shadows really dark, and you have to make the areas where light would fall, like say on the top of your forehead, or top, if it's a bald character, like the top of the head or like the shoulders. if you imagine light would be, right above the model, you need to make those areas really bright, and you need to make the shadow areas really dark. You have to accentuate that to kind of make it seem that, okay, what I'm really looking at from a distance for a model that's, like 3 centimeters approximately, that looks like a beard, or that looks like a hand, or that looks like a weapon, or that looks like a cloak. So that's the idea. You have to really, you can't just slap on one paint, one paint color and be like, yeah, okay, all right, that's a red cloak. It doesn't really look like a red cloak. It just, or it doesn't look like that's a fireball in that little miniature's hand. If you give it like one coat of orange from a distance, it's like a deformed mango. It doesn't really look like fire. So you got to give it a little bit of contrast. That's one thing that people getting into the hobby don't they don't grasp that concept until they actually see it, until it's actually shown to them, and then they'll be like, okay, now it really looks like wood, when I look at it from this distance. Otherwise it was just looking like, just like a plain brown, like, piece of something. I don't know.
Makes sense. It's interesting, like how one hobby can like sort of venture into so many spaces, because like you're talking about color theory and you're talking about like understanding how lights and shadows work, and like so much thought and so much insight goes into making what is honestly a tiny piece of like resin or plastic. Like it's crazy to me that there's so much thought and like active effort involved into making something that small look so beautiful, right? So what's that been like for you? Like, you mentioned that you weren't the artistic kind, right? So like learning about color theory and learning about these things, like what's that been like?
Yeah. It's been to be very honest, it's been absolutely amazing. I've loved it. Some people, me saying this, I just want to put a little disclaimer out there. Me saying that, I paint from darkest shadows to like brightest highlights doesn't mean that you have to do it. Every person may not want to paint that way, or every person might somebody might not want to spend like 1-2 hours painting a miniature. They might want to be done in like 15 minutes. So it's absolutely fine with you putting on just one coat of paint on your miniature and slap it on the table, as long as you're satisfied, as long as that makes you happy. That's what's important. However, I like went head first and jumped straight into the deep end as I got into this hobby. You're right. Like I said earlier, I don't have any kind of artist, any connection to theory. Me, when I started understanding that, okay, what, that doesn't really look like wood, or that doesn't really look like a red cloak. It just looks like something red put on the model. How do I make it look like fabric? How do I make it look like leather? How do I make hair actually look like hair? When I started diving a little deeper into that, that's when I kind of understood. And this is all basically YouTube videos and things I've read online. Like color theory is just if you don't know it, it doesn't really matter. But once you understand like the concept, like in that red cloak, if I make the shadows, if I put a little blue in the shadows, the red really pops even more. Like things like that, just it makes no sense. I mean, at least to the layperson, when I was like, wait, what? How can I put blue?
I lost you for a bit.
For a red cloak, like the cold color, and then once I did it, I was like, "What?" This is like mind exploding, and just like that. This is amazing. Can you see me? You're stuck as well.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, you're back. I lost you at putting a little bit of blue in red and making the red pop.
I'm sorry. Where did you lose me?
I lost you at putting a little bit of blue in red and how that makes the red really pop, and when you explain it.
Yeah. All right. So that's exact. I mean, what I was saying was that things like that. When I came across color theory, how you put cool shadows for a warm color makes a warm color look really make it really pop, makes it look really warm. That didn't make any sense to me. I was like, what is this nonsense I'm reading? That how someone's telling me to put blue in my red cloak? That makes no sense. And then once I did it, once I applied the theory, once I applied the concept, it just blew my mind. It absolutely is something that I never knew. And then once I saw the results, I was like, clearly I need to like dig deeper into this. And it's amazing. It's like you rightly said, me learning. I mean, I've learned so much in this hobby, which even relates to real life. Even real life stuff, things like color theory, like you said, you go to the supermarket and you see, you go to Nature's Basket or some supermarket around here, and you see green grapes put in purple colored crates, and you don't realize this, but on a subconscious level, though, those green grapes look even greener because they're in purple crates. It's amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's actually great, because I wanted to ask you this after. Like, has this hobby sort of blend into real life things? Like, have you started seeing things differently? Like you mentioned, like the grapes, right? Have there been other instances where you're like, oh, that's interesting, and you know that because of your miniature painting? Have there been more instances of that?
Now, yeah, absolutely. Now, subconsciously, obviously, now that I have that knowledge, I do, whether consciously or subconsciously, I do use it to a certain extent. I mean, that's like me arguing with the wife as to why should we have I don't know, why should the color of the sofa be this color, or it's just like small random things. Why should we get those color curtains or something like that? Just conversation and topics along those lines. And now I'm like, that listen to me, man. I know color theory. You don't know what you're talking about.
You're like, listen, I know color.
Like, yes, it's like exactly. I am the expert. I am the one that paints, tiny 3 centimeter figures. Let me decide the color of the curtains.
That's great. How has it been, explaining this hobby to your wife, who as far as I know, isn't a D&D player or a tabletop player? How is it how did you explain to her, yes, I'm getting into this?
Not at all.
What was that like?
No, I didn't really explain anything. She just kind of saw me doing, and she was like, the first time she's like, really, what are you doing? I was like, at that point, obviously, I wasn't as deep into it as I am now. But at that point, I'm just trying something out. She's like, okay. And then after that, I've got to say, she's been very supportive. And she's been very supportive. But she's very cool about it. I mean, she's not really a gamer. I've tried getting her into D&D several times, but with real life responsibilities, just somehow it's never worked out. But hopefully, fingers crossed, someday soon. Never say never.
That's good. I mean, I love a partner who is always supportive. That happened with Valmik when I was like, I'm gonna try making dice, and he's like, yeah, sure, do it. And I expected a lot of dice. Don't you want to just buy some? I'm like, no, I'm gonna make some, and it's great. It always warms my heart when they're just go for it. The best cheerleaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But you talked about diving into the deep end. A part of, people don't know this, but you have two, a massive one and a small one, 3D printers, specifically for printing miniatures. How do you go from buying a cardboard box of cakes and miniatures to buying 2 machines to print your own miniatures? Walk me through that process.
So I honestly, I don't have an answer for you there. It's just, I don't know, it just snowballed, man. It started off with the Legend of Drizzt board game in 2017. And I don't know what happened. I got another board game. I got the third Dungeons and Dragons board game. I got a few other models that looked online that I saw online. I was like, those look better than this China-made crap. It's not really that high quality. Now, you always see what's better, and I was like, yeah, this is really good. There's so many options out there. But I like miniatures. You'd be shocked, but minis, high quality resin minis are quite expensive. And thankfully, at the beginning of 2019, well, thankfully for me, but not so good for my wallet. At the beginning of 2019, I was just like, I saw 3D. That's when resin 3D printers for homes got really affordable with Anycubic launching the Anycubic Photon, and there were a lot of makers, there were a lot of creators that were designing STL files of these amazing like D&D miniatures and fantasy miniatures and sci-fi miniatures as well. And I was like, oh my god, I gotta stop spending money on these these minis that I've been spending on, because these are clearly far superior. Like, look at those files. And that's how I got into 3D printing as well. I started off in 2019 with one machine. I got two more machines after. I don't know how the hell that happened. That just happened, man.
I remember
it's snowball and it's out of control.
The second one, and then like a few days later, suddenly there's a photograph on Instagram of a third printer, and I'm like, what is this guy doing?
That's actually my pre-orders. My pre-orders, to be fair, my pre-orders were really far apart, but they just both came at the same time. But yeah, even that's the same reaction that even the wife had. She's like, do you really need two? And I was like, I don't need it, but you see this one, this is a big one. Like, this one, the other one, that's small and that has its pros, but this is a big one. Like, I can make big stuff. And not too happy about that. Bombay's a crowded city. The real estate is at a premium, and I have two 3D printers taking up a lot of space in my house. So that is a bit of a thorn.
But
it is what it is, man. This is the maker life. What are you gonna do, right? What are you gonna do?
The maker life is super glue, X-Acto knives, and paint. Lots of paint.
Yeah. You're super gluing your fingers all the time. You're cutting yourself up, and at any given point, there's always some kind of acrylic paint on some part of my hand. Whether I'm at the office or whether I'm at home, it does not matter.
Have you snuck like miniatures into work and just like painted at work?
No.
Are you saying that because you don't want anybody else to see this and be like, that's what this guy gets up? You tell me later. But
no, unfortunately, actually, sadly, I'll say sadly, that opportunity has not presented itself.
But if it did, would you do it?
But if it did, I would, because yeah, of course, man. Maker life, like I said, there's no looking back. Yeah, you got to jump into the deep end, and I mean it. Yeah, exactly. There are always miniatures that are unpainted. The pile of shame keeps growing, especially when you have a 3D printer. Well, even if you don't have a 3D printer, there's always going to be a pile of shame. You're never going to have all your minis painted.
Speaking of your pile of shame,
that's the sad truth of it.
Do you want to talk about your drawer of shame? Do you want to introduce us to like just the amount of tools that you have invested in, and like how, like really get into how much of the deep end you are in?
So 5-year. Yeah. So again, it's just I don't know, man. I don't know what this maker life is, Indrani. I'm gonna be honest here. It's like started off with like 6 paints a bottle that I need a red, blue, yellow, black and white, and I should be able to make any colors. I mean, that's what the artsy people say. And 5 years later, I have like a drawer full of paints, and I'm kind of wondering, how did I get to this point in my life?
No, great.
But yeah, it's not a necessity. Obviously, it's just I have a problem accumulating paint colors. I like having lots of paints, and I don't like mixing paints, again because I don't have an artistic background. And secondly, I'm a little impatient. I don't I don't want to spend a lot of time mixing paint to get the exact color that I have, that I want. If I can just get, if I do have access to a ready-made bottle that I can, a ready-made tube or bottle, if it's right there. It is what it is, but some people, I mean, anyone should not think that they need a drawer of paints to get into this hobby. But yeah, it's okay. Some people just have like 7 or 8 paints, and that's all they need to like make some stunning like works of art.
What would you say for a person who is looking to get into the hobby? What would you say, like, if you have these things, you're ready to go? Like,
If you have, sorry?
if you have like these few tools, you're ready to go. Like, what is the bare minimum a person like me would need to get into miniature painting?
If you want to get into miniature painting, you would need the absolute bare essentials you would need. Okay, say you have a board game. You have a board game and you want to paint the minis of your board game. You can find a cup around your house for water, for dirty paint water. You will need a couple of tubes of paint. Depending on the colors you want, or if you want to just buy the absolute bare minimum, just buy the primary colors, which are red, blue, and green. Jeez, I should not be blanking out on this. Yeah.
Green.
Yeah, and black and white, obviously, and black and white, and and you need you'll need two brushes. You need one slightly larger brush and one smaller brush. The brushes need to have sharp tips, because obviously the objects you're painting are going to be very small, like 28 mm or 32 mm. Maybe bigger if you're painting like a big boss, like a dragon or something. But two brushes, some paints. You need a palette. You don't really need a palette either. If you just have some kind of parchment paper or foil around the house, you can honestly use that as a palette and just mix your paints on it and just discard it. Although having a palette would be nice. What else? You need some glue, because something at some point in your painting life, you are going to break something, and it is going to have to be glued together. You're going to need that, and maybe one small tiny hobby knife. Sometimes you have these annoying mold lines on these plastic miniatures. When they get cast, the plastic kind of squeeze a little bit out where the miniatures are joined together, and it creates like a thin line. Sometimes that line goes right in the middle of the miniature space. That's really irritating to look at, because you do such a good job on painting the model, and then there's like this unnatural line right across it, ruining everything. You need a small tiny hobby knife to scrape that away. I think that's about it. You should be ready to go with just about that much. If you're going to get into another game, like maybe like a Warhammer or any other war game where the kits need to be assembled and the models come on sprues, plastic sprues, and you need a small side cutter or sprue cutter just to get the miniature parts off of it. That's it. That should be the absolute bare minimum.
What
And
kind
you
of
can
paints do
you
you
can start your journey.
like for a beginner?
Always acrylic. This is well, not always acrylic. I should correct myself. Acrylic and oils are the two types of paints you can use in this hobby. But the more popular one, and the one that almost everybody uses because it's much easier to use, would be acrylic paints. You should buy acrylic paints out. You can buy locally in India here. I would not recommend student grade. I would recommend investing in the little better ones, mainly because the student grade, the pigment of the student grade paints is not as good for this hobby.
It's not as
The
saturated.
pigments are a little chalky. No, it's I mean, saturation is another thing, but the pigment's a little chalky. It's not smooth. When you paint and you apply it on your model, if your pigment is a little chalky on something that's like this tiny, when it comes off chalky, when you see bits of pigment on it, that's gonna, you want the slightly better acrylic paints. Tubes absolutely, you can get Camlin or whatever fits your budget. So if whatever fits your budget, I'm not going to tell you to go buy like Taylor Downey or something like that. You can, people do amazing things with the most basic tools as well.
Nice. Yeah, that seems like a fairly minimal setup to get started. Are there any creators that you would recommend people like watch or like turn to if they wanted to learn?
There are so many. There's oh, I don't know. I don't know where to begin. You're gonna have Miniac. You're gonna have Marco, not just Mecha. I'll post a link to it. Honestly, it would just be easier if anyone who's interested, just pop over to the Mini Painting Telegram group, and we have all the information there on the pinned message. You'll find a lot of there are many amazing creators and far better painters than me, or far better painters than I ever would be, that are there online, on Instagram. You can see their works on Instagram. You can see them painting live, or their painting tutorials on YouTube as well. It's an amazing community that's really grown. It's grown exponentially. I've seen it grown exponentially in the last like 4-5 years. It's there's a lot of good content out there.
This is something I want to know as a player, because when we weren't in the post-apocalyptic world, and people could actually meet in real life, and you could actually play with your party in real life. What was their reaction like when you would put like miniatures down? Like I want to know what their sort of response to it was.
So the sad thing among all of this is when I started my Descent into the Burners campaign, I managed to just paint up my party's minis. We had bought miniatures for the entire group, and I managed to paint only their minis. I did not manage to paint the monsters, but yeah, I think it was quite positive. I mean, my players seemed to really enjoy it. I mean, they seemed particularly thrilled when I put it down for the first time. Like I said, that sense of that little sense of ownership at the table. You're playing in a world you don't know much about, but this little small tiny piece of toy, that's actually you. That's a representation of you in that world. So it was quite exciting for them. I hope.
I'm sure it was great. Did they take it with them, or were you like, I'm gonna keep these, don't break them?
No, so they're with me. The minis are with me because we were playing over here. So instead of them lugging their minis and their character sheets and stuff like that around, they would just leave everything out.
Makes sense. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about your what's been your favorite project that you've worked on or you're working on? And I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it.
My favorite project that I am working on, that I have ever worked on.
Both. Why not both?
Just off. I don't know. That's a tough one. I have a lot of favorites. I really like the Amara commission a lot. That was a really big one for me.
And for me, I stare at it. I cuddle it to sleep every night.
Yeah. I'm glad you like it. That was a nice one. I like the bus. I like a bus that I've painted up. I've not posted anywhere yet because that's an upcoming project which will be announced soon. I have too many to choose from. Honestly, this is like it's a tough one. Yeah? Each one is special. Each one is each model that I've painted like represents some part of my journey. So asking me to choose just one is really hard.
Fair enough. Is there a particularly large model of a dragon that you're currently working on that you want to talk about?
Yeah. That's my 2021 that's my 2021 project. I've printed out the largest model the largest model that I've printed, and it's also going to be the largest model that I've ever painted so far.
Do you want to tell people what it is?
Yeah, the Queen. I've been painting all these tiny models, and unfortunately, even though I keep them on my shelf, they're not really that big that you can see them from afar. So I decided that maybe 2021 is the year wherein I finally get to making and painting my own little display piece that I can proudly put on my shelf on my desk. So I decided, since it's going to be the first one and since it's going to be a big one, when you go big, I mean, you've got to go big or you got to go home. So, if you're gonna go big, it's got to be dragons. And then if you're really gonna go big, then you're gonna do the Queen of the Dragons. So I am going to be painting Tiamat for myself. Hopefully I should complete it soon. That is a work in progress. You guys, if you're interested in seeing that, please come over to my Instagram page at the
Yes.
rate Balrog Brush. We'll link it also down. You can see my shenanigans.
Here and everywhere. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see my shenanigans daily through my stories and posts.
He's a massive troll, so tread lightly, but great guy. Great
Indrani, thank you. Indrani, unfortunately, is always on the receiving end of those comments.
My biggest gripe with you as a person is that even when you fuck up, you will make it an insult about me and tell me that, oh, I did an Indrani. And I'm like, wow. It's great.
Well,
I love it.
I mean, you started the trend, so you can't blame me. I'm just following in the footsteps,
Yeah. I'm the alien with a band-aid on my face. So.
I was just I was gonna say stuff about maker life and band-aids and stuff, but I'm just holding my I'm refraining myself.
Yeah. He's being very polite right now. I
to the
gotta
public.
say. Yeah. Such a massive I love it. Awesome. Would you be interested, guys?
Yeah.
This is for the people watching. If you would be interested, maybe you could walk us through your process something. We could figure out a way to record how you print. If that's something you're even open to, would that be something you'd be looking to do if people want to see?
Record how I paint? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. I was just thinking about maybe putting up short videos, not really long, professionally edited ones or anything like that, but just maybe a time lapse of my painting sessions. But that's something that people want to see. Or if you want me to do a live stream, maybe for an hour or two or something like that, just post in the comments. Let us know. Message us. Message me. I'd be glad. This is it's a great idea. Honestly, I would love having an audience to engage with, because this is a hobby wherein you're sitting at the desk usually all by yourself. Even if people are around, you're really being. You're just basically putting a full focus on this small 3 centimeter man or elf, dwarf, woman, whatever. So it's good to have company and just chit chat while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Yeah, you guys let us know. I for one would love that, so do it anyway. But I would love to see what people have to say about this. Thank you.
Yeah, why not? Let's try and figure it out.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me, talking, and not insulting me for 40 minutes straight. I think that's an accomplishment for you. So well done.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, Rani. And so this one has been very PG rated. Maybe if I'm to be invited back on, the filters come off.
Yeah.
Or maybe on the live stream of me painting, or some video of me painting at some point.
We should do this. You paint, I'll make dice. We'll live stream together. And it'll just be chaos. Yeah, it'll just be chaos.
Yeah. Absolutely. There'll be blood and band-aids everywhere.
Basically. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on.
Great idea. Thank you so much for having me.
Do you want to plug your socials? Do you want to tell us where you're at?
Yeah, usually just Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well. I'm trying to be more active there. Just we'll post everything down in the comments at the rate Balrog Brush on both social medias.
Awesome.
And take care everyone, and stay safe.
Yes, please stay home. And if you're stepping out, wear a mask. And thank you for joining us. We will see you in the next episode of whatever we get up to with this honestly movies. Yeah, thank you so much, Rajat. I will catch up with you guys later.